Welcome to Socializing Security, where every week we have a discussion about security, compliance, and beyond.
Our goal is to learn and grow by socializing each week's topic with each other, our guests, and with you.
A quick compliance note, this podcast is meant for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal or regulatory advice.
We're glad you've joined us, and we hope you'll learn along with us.
And we're back for another episode of Socializing Security. Hope my audio checks are okay. I'm going to try my best. I am actually working out of a different location, and it will actually be the headquarters location moving forward for Socializing Security. So I'm excited to announce that our podcast basically has grown out of our home offices, and we will have our first HQ headquarters in Austin. Brian and I are actually going to do a true introduction to Torote Co. You're going to see true the founders level experience of I've been moving for a couple days. I have broken fingernails and look a bit of a mess. So thank you all so much for joining us again. And we're ready to kick off 2026 with some predictions. So if you haven't already, I would go ahead and encourage you to go listen to the first episode of the year for 2026, where Brian breaks down his predictions for what he's expecting as a technologist to look forward to in 2026. He's kind of doing his early stage predictions, and I'll kind of just run through them. For the most of them, I agree with most of what he said. And so I definitely want you to go listen to his episode because it was phenomenal. And I was sad that we had to do these ones solo. Such is life. We're both just really busy at the moment. And so we might end up doing a couple more of these types of Brian rants versus Milou speaks the truth kind of solo episodes to just fill in while we're both traveling a lot for work. So I believe one of the ones that I really want to start echoing off of is, he had said the AI arms race. And I absolutely agree. I think in 2026, we're going to continue to see the AI race just continue to dominate the industry. What I think from my perspective as a compliance officer and also as a CEO and founder, I represent a lot of companies that are trying to do the right thing by consumers. And so I think the thing that we are struggling to find our footing in when we're talking about the AI race is it's very much every tech company for themselves at the moment. And it's very much this, who's releasing what thing first. I think in 2025, especially in Q4, I noticed a lot of the major giants were pushing out sloppy rollouts for major changes. Like Apple and Google were very clearly competing with making sure that, their end of year updates went out without prioritizing quality control. And so I will absolutely echo what Brian said. And my prediction is that we will continue to see the AI race just continue to just be a hot topic. I don't really want to talk about it on this episode just because I feel like we always end up talking about AI. I'm kind of sick of talking about AI. So I would echo that prediction and say, yes, I absolutely agree. We're going to continue to see AI be dominating the conversation. I would say I'm not going to be totally surprised if we start to see a little bit of the AI bubble burst a bit towards Q3, Q4 of 2026. I think a lot of us are getting sick of talking about AI. That doesn't mean from a security and compliance perspective, it doesn't scare the crap out of me because it really does. And I feel like I've become more terrified of what the potential could be than I think I even was when we were really starting to talk about it in 2024. So I would echo that one. Absolutely. I think we will continue to see frustration on the consumer side with a lack of consumer protection enforcement. And we will continue to see just overall burnout within the environment at the moment. We're seeing, at least in the technology industry, we're still experiencing a lot of tumultuous job situations where companies are really considering their employees expendable, especially with the reliance on AI chatbots and, customer success, customer service roles have basically been decimated in the US within the communities. I would say another one of my predictions for 2026 is that we will continue to see just rampant frustration for consumers, which I'm having a hard time with personally, just because in 2025, already was just feeling like it was really hard to be a consumer of tech products as somebody who's a technologist and actually loves innovation and generally is one of the first cheerleaders of the new and improved thing. I personally find it's really hard to even just buy something online. It used to be intended as oh, hey, really quick, instead of going to the store, I'm going to go on my phone and purchase something. Now I feel like it's harder for me to do that than it is to just take the mental load of just going to the store to get the things. I think we will continue to see a little bit of a circumvention of instead of everybody wanting to outsource everything to be convenient to tech companies, I'm hopeful that we'll see a bit of a resurgence of people breaking that and saying, hey, as a consumer, I actually find it really annoying that my app updates on a regular basis. For example, found it really sloppy that like certain providers were pushing out major changes at the end of the year when people are already really just stressed. Holiday time in general around the world is just a stressful time for folks. So I personally, as a technologist, disagree when major companies are like, oh, we really need to push this before, like, get it out the door before the end of the year. I think it's really reckless from a security perspective. I think, we definitely saw some really large breaches and some really large security incidents between Thanksgiving and Christmas per usual in Q4 2025. So I think we sadly will continue to see some of that. So I would say my second prediction is just like consumer burnout. I'm hopeful that we will see some regulatory change in that space globally. I don't expect it that much in the United States, given the current political environment. I think the states will continue to push for it, which is amazing. But it is creating a bit of a fractured compliance regulatory scheme in the United States. So I think my third prediction will be we will continue to see states leading the charge for technology regulation, and that making it more complicated for remote companies to operate and sell effectively in multiple states within the United States. I think the privacy law fractured mindset that we're having, that we really saw in 24 and 25, for example, in California with the CCPA, and in New York, Colorado, and many other states now have privacy laws, Texas included. I think privacy was the first one that companies are actively pushing the barriers on. And so that's where regulators were very much focused, ensuring that they want to protect children's privacy rights. They want to make sure that spam calls, all of the robocalling types of requirements, we're pushing those changes. I think in 2026, we will continue to see this type of fractured mentality in the United States on the state-specific side, and the focus very much will be AI. The tricky part here is it would be helpful if we had a federal or international standard that the states could agree to. The EU has this with the EU AI Act. The US is trying to do this with NIST, with the NIST cybersecurity framework, as well as with the AI risk management framework. I personally, as a compliance officer in this space, I haven't really seen universal adoption of any of them. So I'm hopeful that we will continue to see some type of standardization across these types of fractured modalities, because it's really tricky especially for small business owners, for them to understand the nuances. And this is something that I deal with my clients on a regular basis, is just clarifying, well, we can do it this way in California, but we can do it this way in Colorado and this way in Florida. As opposed to what the EU mindset is hey, these countries have come together and decided that this is the standard for the GDPR, for example, for the General Data Protection Regulation. The difference being there that the EU countries specifically can still set stricter standards, right? So it is actually like a universal data privacy law or data protection law. But in Germany and France, for example, there are stricter requirements that are a little bit lesser in Ireland versus, than the UK did their own thing. So it's been an interesting time for compliance professionals. And so I think I would cue that into my next prediction, which will be that compliance will continue to be a rising career, and governance, risk, and compliance, GRC, this space will continue to be more important as this regulatory minefield continues to just shape and evolve and get more and more complicated. It's interesting. I spoke recently with a up-and-coming career person, and they said that they actually went to ChatGPT and put in their background, and, they were an administrator and they had done like executive assistant roles, and they were contemplating law school or being a paralegal or what they wanted to do, but they weren't sure about student loans. And they put in all of this information into ChatGPT and asked like, hey, based off of my background, like what are emerging and important career fields that I should consider that actually might get me like more lucrative positions at the companies I'm working at. Ironically, I guess one of the top recommended things was governance, risk, and compliance. And that to me is inspiring and very hopeful, because when AI started becoming everything, so many companies started setting up kind of check the box compliance programs and check the box GRC tooling. And, my next prediction is about the SOC 2, so I'll keep a little asterisk there, but I'm very hopeful for career folks that are contemplating getting into IT, tech, cyber, especially those that have experienced job loss and have just been battered down by how terrible the technology job market has been in the US, as well as I think globally. It's just been a really, really tough job market. I'm hopeful that those individuals might be more inspired to stand up and say, hey, I think I want to work in compliance, just like I did all those years ago. It is an area where, because AI is making a lot of mistakes, we need humans in the review process, right? So some of the best AI governance programs are those that have humans in review and humans in step and humans to actually confirm that the AI tooling made the right decision. That is really hard when most of the workforce is either overloaded or has been let go. So I'm very hopeful for future compliance professionals that they have the opportunity to grow and expand within this space as opposed to be taken out, because the original inclination that I had so many security and IT folks be like, oh, well, we can automate our policies. We don't need compliance anymore. And it's like, no, actually, we need individuals that can actually interpret regulatory requirements and make sure that they can follow the standard that is constantly changing. And so if you are interested in a career in tech and you have some type of ethical compass and really think you actually don't mind following the rules and you like actually helping companies interpret different regulatory backgrounds or different countries or different cultural differences, I think compliance is a really burgeoning career field for that. And I'm very grateful that I'm in it. And I would also encourage any of the listeners that are in that position, like, look at jobs in compliance. Also reach out to me. You know, y'all know how to reach me, Milou at Socializing Security, and you can find me on LinkedIn too, and as compliance counsel. But that to me is one of the areas that I was hopeful to see, because, you know, the legal field is not that way. AI is making it a lot easier for people to access legal care without necessarily needing a lawyer in the review process. That's been a hopeful thing. My next prediction will be about the SOC 2. And I'm not really going to pick on SOC 2 in this particular session. I think I have some really incredible SOC 2 auditors that will do that much better. I think in the United States, the SOC 2 standard, it's SOC 2, and it's from the AICPA, the American Institution of Certified Public Accountants. So it's CPAs that have actually set this it's a US, really Americentric standard, but it's an information security standard. And there's two different ones. There's the SOC 2, SOC 1, and it's like a SOC 1 is really if you're auditing financials or impacting a company's financials, then usually you need a SOC 1. And then the SOC 2 is actually just a more generic information security standard that a lot of companies expect startups and small businesses to have maintained some type of baseline standard for information security to protect customer data. There also happens to be a type 1 and a type 2, and that's really just the phase of maturity of the program. So if companies doing a SOC 2 type 1, that's the first time they're doing SOC, and usually it's a 3 or 6 month evaluation to make sure that they actually can comply. Okay, so SOC 2, when we're talking about type 1 versus type 2, it's really making sure that if a company's undergoing a type 1, it's generally their first time doing a SOC 2 or SOC 1 audit. And so that means they're doing like a shortened audit period to make sure that they can prove to their auditors that they actually can comply with the requirements of the standard. And then from there, a type 2 is the more repeat assessment. So generally companies do a SOC 2 type 1 for 3 months. And then after that, if they've passed, then they go into their SOC 2 type 2. And then from there moving forward, it's usually a year standard. So general best practice is to do it on an annual basis. The SOC 2 used to be kind of the best in class, I would say, for information security for US companies. It is not that way anymore. It has become kind of a joke because of the amount of check the box compliance programs that have been built based off of GRC tooling that has decided to prioritize inexpensive audits so that the software technology can be more expensive than the actual audits. That is the wrong mindset. In my professional opinion, I think we should be paying auditors what they're worth to make sure that they're actually securing the systems and testing them properly and making sure that we're holding companies to the same bar. Given that, I think we will stop seeing such a reliance on the SOC 2 in 2026, and we will start to see more of a focus on ISO, the International Standards Organization. Those types of standards like an ISO 27001. Given it's a global standard, the way that those auditors are required to have certifications and licensing, they are holding the line better than the AICPA is. I wish it were different. I really think the AICPA needs to wake up and understand that a SOC 2 audit that might have generally cost anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 now costs $2,000. It's most likely not going to be worth the same amount of money, and it's also just not going to be the same quality. So I would love it if the AICPA would wake up and actually hold their own standard. They're supposed to be holding accounting firms accountable for writing off easy reports for things that actually don't meet the requirements of the standard. So I would hope to see that. But in the meantime, I think companies will start to flock towards the ISO standards again. I think we'll see a resurgence in ISO 27001. And we might see a resurgence in CSA STAR, which is one of my favorite international standards, and that is done by the Cybersecurity Alliance. So CSA STAR is another one that y'all could consider, but I would say that should be a certified assessment as opposed to just a self-assessment. So most companies are able to do a CSA STAR self-assessment, a level 1, and I think we will start now to see companies requiring level 2 and level 3. I hope so. I love the CSA STAR. It's a good one. It basically takes all of the international standards and combines them into one. and then also trains people how to comply with the standards. So, okay. What are some of my other wilder predictions? I think I want to make some predictions for the podcast too. I think we are going to get to do some really, really cool things with Socializing Security this year. And so I'm super excited for that. I think Brian and I will be at RSA. I'm going to manifest that for us. I think we might even be at Defcon. I would love to be at Defcon. I would love to be a speaker at Defcon. I'm also terrified to go to Defcon. So I think I'm the right person to go, but I would like a buddy. And so I think it'd be really cool to see Socializing Security at both RSA as well as Defcon for 2026 in some type of content creation, influencer type role, where we actually have speaking engagements or we're able to interview really cool guests to socialize with us. I think we will have a headquarters location in Austin, Texas, and we will be a part of a conference called the HERS conference, the Humans in Equity, Risk, and Security Conference, HERS, Humans in Equity, Risk, and Security. And I believe that's going to be around South by Southwest in Austin in March. I think the date is the 13th of March, Friday the 13th, which is kind of spooky. So I'm really excited for us to be able to do our live first in-studio recording, which I think will be a really big deal. Trying to think. Those are kind of my Socializing Security ones. Trying to think just in general. I think we will unfortunately continue to see more and more breaches, and I think we will get wilder outcomes. Not trying to end it necessarily on a negative note, but I do think, unfortunately, given the lack of regulation and the lack of prioritization of the protection of personal information in generative AI tooling and with software companies prioritizing monetary gains over privacy protections, I think for the end consumer and the end user whose data just continues to get leaked, it's really hard because I think we're all so burnt out and we're all so used to getting those letters in the mail and those emails being impacted by yet another breach. I would hope that we can all agree that password management is still very, very important. I think we saw some really cool things with passkeys come through in 2025, which was good, exciting technology. I would love to see encryption technology really take off when we're talking about digital encryption for AI content creation. So AI that's created by content should have a digital certification or key that looks similar to encryption methodologies that we're similar and familiar with. So that way we can actually start to better actually understand what is a deep fake versus what is a real. That would be something I would really, really love to see. It's very needed. We should already be requiring companies to actually let consumers know when something has been digitally altered with AI technology or when it's been completely fabricated by AI. So that would be something. Not only do I want to predict, I also just really fundamentally want to manifest that because it's very important. And I would love to also see enhanced protections for creators and whatever that looks like for whatever platform they're using, whatever content they're creating, whether it's mixed media, if they're actually doing tactile things, if they're doing stuff online like we are. I think I would like to see continued support for small business and content creators and creatives in this difficult environment. I fear we will not, and I fear we will see more and more companies taking advantage of ripping off intellectual property and copying incredible bodies of work without giving credit where credit is due. So unfortunately, I do predict that we'll continue to see more plagiarism and more copyright infringement issues. I am hopeful that those types of regulatory actions and that legal precedents will kickstart some of these very necessary, needed technology regulations that we need to agree upon as industry experts to protect our own personal data, to protect customer data, to protect just everyone in general. Let me think of my last one. This is what I love so much about Brian too, because I'm sure he was very thoughtful and he had his all outlined out. I listened to his episode and it was wonderful. And so it was nice to listen to his, and his are so similar to mine. So I'm trying to come up with different ones so that we didn't just have the same episode twice over. I do kind of want to echo what he had said about healthcare though, because I think it was really important. I think one of the areas that we're going to see continued battlegrounds for the importance of regulation for technology is the healthcare industry, because some of our most sensitive data and some of the things that honestly keep me up at night as a risk officer and privacy and compliance professional and lawyer is just the idea of AI tooling be able to see the insides of your body during surgery, or to be able to understand the craniology of somebody's and the anatomy of someone's face, to actually be able to identify them without us realizing that they're doing that. That really scares me and keeps me up at night. And so I would love to see improved change with HIPAA the Health Information Portability and Accountability Act to just see that I think it's health insurance, but yeah, it's fine. I'm not on a quiz. But we can all look up what HIPAA is. But in the United States, that's the main privacy law and security law governing health information, personal health information, PHI. But I think I would love to just see continued pressure on companies to making sure that they're doing the right thing when it comes to healthcare and protecting patient information. We talk a lot about personally identifiable information, PII, and personal data. They're interchangeable things for me, but when we're talking about protected classes of information and sensitive data, I fear that companies have focused too much on data as an asset as opposed to data as people, and data as really, really sensitive things that can be so damaging. And so I would like to manifest for 2026 that companies will continue to do the right thing. I fear that they will continue to prioritize corporate greed over personal protection of information. And so I think for 2026, I will say it's going to be more and more important for individuals to advocate for their personal privacy, whether that means opting out when you're in the doctor's office and they're asking to record your notes in an AI tool, or saying no thank you when HR joins a meeting and has, Gemini turned on, or saying I'd rather not be recorded, and understanding that individuals need to understand how they can reject information and how they can say no thank you and they can withdraw their consent at any time. I think we need to train individuals how to be more mindful and thoughtful when they're in those types of circumstances, because I've been in those positions. It's really hard to tell your doctor, like, no, thank you. I don't want that. And they're like, oh, well, it's actually easier for me to do my work. And it's like, that's great. I don't want my information, especially not my sensitive PHI, in an AI tool that I don't know. The best part is usually if you push back on them, they don't know what it is. You're like, okay, is it backed into Microsoft or is it like in OpenAI? They don't know how to answer the question. And to me, this is one of the things that I think Brian and I went on another episode that's coming out soon, is just we need to hold the individual that's collecting the data accountable for their personal security requirements and also ensuring that they are protecting our information. I wish we could expect companies to do the right thing when it comes to protecting customer information. I think we've had so many data breaches that we can just all collectively agree that that's maybe a pipe dream these days. I predict that we will all continue to have to be our own best advocate when it comes to protecting our personal information and to securing our data, which means being thoughtful and informed and socializing with content like this to making sure that we're learning how we can ask the question and empowering each of us to understand what our rights are and what we can and cannot refuse, especially when we're patients or especially when we're struggling or we're vulnerable communities or we're others. I think it's so freaking important that all of us understand the risk, because we are so far behind the technology because it's rapidly advancing and we can't keep up. I'm saying this as a cybersecurity and technologist and attorney who advocates for clients. I'm having a hard time keeping up with the amount of rapid change that we're seeing in our own industry. So if technologists such as myself and Brian are struggling to just keep up with the rapid advancements, it's nearly impossible to expect my neighbor down the street or a grandparent or a friend or somebody who's really not into tech to also follow those requirements and to understand the gravity of the situation. So I predict that we will all need to be our best own advocate to continuing fighting for the right for privacy. You all know that we always ask our guests this, and I think it will absolutely still be the question of the year, which, do you believe in the fight for privacy or the fight for security? I adamantly believe in both. And I think as individuals these days, the fight for security should be on the company. I think the fight for privacy is now on each and every single one of us. So I will say, I think in 2026, we all need to learn how to advocate better and to have nice little, no, thank you. I don't, I'd like to opt out, or, we can be polite and mindful about how we push back, but we need to stand up to our bullies. And some of them might look like cyber bullies, and some of them might look like your doctor who doesn't know exactly which AI technology he's using or she's using. And then if that's the case, you shouldn't be using it. If they can't answer those basic questions of, hey, I understand that you're using it. Is it a platform? What is it back into? Are you aware of their AI stance? Have they had any security breaches? We should be empowering every single one of us to ask those questions, because that's the only way we're going to hold these companies accountable, so that the hope that they might not breach your data in the future. I'm going to leave it at that. So those are my predictions for 2026. I'm very hopeful for what the podcast is going to look like in 2027 already. I think in 2025, Socializing Security gave me some of the coolest opportunities that had really helped kickstart my whole going solo in my career and being able to be my own boss and to be able to be somebody effective and really be an advocate in compliance in cybersecurity and technology and privacy. I'm so proud of us. And so I'm so looking forward to listening back to this episode at the end of 2026 to hear about, what was right versus what was wrong. I'd love to do reflections. I think we'll probably should do response videos where Brian, shreds mine apart and I shred his apart, where we just listen to the other person and say, whether something was right or not. I think both of us are relatively optimistic and also just cautiously terrified. And so I think I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for socializing with us. If you're just joining, if this is your first episode, my name is Milou. I am the Creative Compliance Officer. I have a couple of companies to my name. I am a co-host of Socializing Security, and this is an venture that Brian and I founded together a couple years ago now. So I think this is, we're close to 80 episodes in, I think, at the point of posting this. And if you haven't listened to any of them, please feel free to go back and just listen alongside us, socialize with us. Feel free to reach out to us. LinkedIn is one of the best places to reach out to us, but we will have better community events and more engagement. We plan on hosting in-person events, doing way more and committing to actually the bit. So we've always said we want to do certain things. And I think 2026 will be the year that we actually achieve some of those dreams and goals. So thank you so much for continuing to socialize with us. Happy New Year. Let's kick off 2026 with some amazing, exciting, just hopeful energy so that we can absolutely just crush our goals and our dreams together as we continue to socialize about IT, tech, cyber, privacy, compliance, regulatory, and pretty much anything else under the sun that Brian and I both feel passionate and interested in. So thank you all so much for continuing to socialize with us, and Happy New Year. And let's go. Here's to 2026. I hope it's better than 2025 because my God, that was a hard year. But here we go. We're going to manifest that. We're manifesting positivity, hope, and innovation for 2026. That's thoughtful, creative, and powerful.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Socializing Security. We hope you learned a thing or two with us.
If you'd like to continue socializing with us on this topic or have feedback, we'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn or social media. Just search for Socializing Security. Or you can email us at info@socializingsecurity.com.
Until next time, stay social and stay secure.